GoreTV podcast.
With your hosts, Jill Valentine and Sebastian Castellanos.
Let's get into the show.
All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. You know, sometimes the most everyday things can have hidden depths. And today we're doing exactly that with something you've probably got tucked away in a closet somewhere. Monopoly.
Oh, okay. I see where this is going.
But hold on, before you think it's just another strategy session, we're actually taking a cue from GoreTV. You know, those masters of unsettling entertainment. They had this wild idea. What if Monopoly wasn't about family fun, but social commentary with a healthy dose of horror?
Ooh, that's right up their alley. And you know, it's funny because when you think about it, Monopoly can get pretty cutthroat even without the spooky reimagining.
No kidding. So are they turning Boardwalk into a haunted mansion or something? What's the angle here?
Actually, they start with something even more fundamental. The board itself. Imagine it less like a game board and more like that eerie town from Silent Hill. Inescapable, this endless loop.
Oh, I totally get that vibe. You get stuck in that cycle of buying, selling, trying to come out on top. It's kind of relentless when you think about it.
And that's exactly what GoreTV latches onto, that feeling of being trapped, caught in a system you can't escape.
So it's like, even if you're winning, you're not really winning.
Exactly. Even those prime properties, Boardwalk, Park Place, they become these looming symbols of unattainable wealth. They're right there, but always just out of reach for most players.
It's like that saying, it takes money to make money. But in this twisted version, the game itself seems rigged from the start.
Right, and that's where the social commentary really kicks in. It starts to echo those real-world anxieties we have about things like economic disparity.
Yeah, like no matter how hard you work, the system might be designed to keep some people ahead, while others are just trying to keep their head above water.
And then there's how the game impacts the players. It's like that descent into madness in The Shining, that slow burn as isolation and paranoia turn friends into enemies.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So instead of healthy competition, it's like you need to see everyone else crash and burn, even if it's just a game.
Think about it. That kind of hyper-competitive drive exists everywhere, right? Not just in Monopoly. The pressure to get ahead, even if it means someone else falls behind, that's a very real fear, and the game just amplifies it.
Okay, point taken. So we've got this inescapable board, players turning against each other.
Yeah.
Where does that leave someone who lands on, say, jail?
That's where it gets really interesting. GoreTV frames jail as this weird kind of safe haven, but also at the same time, it's totally a psychological torture chamber, you know, almost like Joseph K. in Kafka's The Trial, completely trapped by the system.
Whoa, hold on. I'm going to need a bit more on that Kafka connection. How does that fit into Monopoly exactly?
Well, in The Trial, Kafka's character is basically caught in this web of bureaucracy, right? Searching for a way out, but the rules are unclear and the whole system seems rigged against him. And in GoreTV's version of Monopoly, jail becomes this distorted mirror of that. It's a breather from the constant competition of the board, sure, but temporary.
So you're stuck, whether you're in jail or out of it. It just highlights how you can never really escape the game's rules, even when you're supposedly safe.
Right. And speaking of feeling trapped, let's talk about how GoreTV reimagines the money in Monopoly. Because it gets pretty unsettling. It's not just about buying properties and paying rent anymore. It's like each dollar represents a piece of your life force in this version. Every transaction, you're watching it drain away.
Okay, so you're not just losing money. It's like you're losing something more essential. It's giving very much deal with the devil vibes.
Yes. They make these chilling comparisons to movies like The Witch, where you see characters so desperate for security or success that they're willing to sacrifice pretty much anything, their very souls even.
It's intense, but I kind of get it.
Yeah.
It's like in real life, there's this constant pressure to keep up, to make more, to not fall behind. It can feel pretty all-consuming.
Absolutely. And that's what GoreTV is tapping into, that fear of not having enough, that feeling of being left behind. It's like they've taken that very real anxiety and turned it up to 11.
So they've turned money into this life or death resource. And what about the properties themselves? They're pretty iconic, right?
Oh, absolutely. And GoreTV doesn't hold back. Those cheaper properties, the ones that seem within reach, they become traps in this twisted game.
Traps out.
Well, they lure you in with this illusion of progress, right? Like, oh, I can afford Baltic Avenue, I'm doing all right. But those endless rent payments, they just drain you dry. You can never quite get ahead.
So it's that whole it takes money to make money problem, except it feels rigged from the start.
Exactly. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got those luxury properties, boardwalk, park place. They become these symbols of excess, almost obscene when you think about the struggles most players are facing just to stay in the game.
It's giving very much eat the rich vibes now.
Right. Like that whole idea of the widened gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's all there, baked right into the board.
It reminds me of movies like Parasite or Squid Game. That social commentary about class and inequality, it's almost woven into the DNA of those stories.
And that's what's so clever about GoreTV's approach. Using a game we all recognize. It makes it relatable, but then they flip the script and force you to confront these unsettling parallels to the real world.
It's making me think about the whole idea of competition in a different light. So if we're talking inescapable board, cutthroat players, money as a life force, properties that represent this whole economic divide. What happens when it all comes to an end? What does winning even look like in this version?
Well, that's where it gets really bleak. In GoreTV's Monopoly, there's no real winning. Even if you play ruthlessly and bankrupt every last opponent, it's a hollow victory.
You're saying even the person holding all the money, all the property, they're not really fulfilled.
Exactly. Because the game, this twisted version of it anyway, has taken something from them. Their humanity, their connections, they're surrounded by the ruins of their own making. GoreTV actually compares it to The Road, Cormac McCarthy's novel.
Okay, that's a pretty bleak comparison. What's the connection there?
It's about survival at all costs, right? In both The Road and this reimagined Monopoly, the lines between right and wrong get blurred. And you're left wondering, at the end, was it all worth it?
So it's like achieving a goal, but losing yourself along the way.
Precisely. And that's what makes this whole thought experiment so compelling. It's a funhouse mirror reflection of our own anxieties about success and what we're willing to sacrifice to get ahead.
And it makes you question, if even winning leaves you empty, what's the alternative? Is there a way to engage with these systems without being corrupted by them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think there's one easy answer. But you've hit on something important. Awareness is key.
So by recognizing these darker patterns, by being aware of how easily things can go off the rails, we're already a step ahead.
Exactly. Think of it like this. GoreTV's Monopoly isn't meant to be a prediction. It's more like a cautionary tale. It's showing us what can happen if we let those worst impulses take over.
Okay, so it's not about giving up on ambition entirely. It's about being more mindful about how we pursue it.
Right. It's like you can understand the rules of the game, even master them, without letting them turn you into someone you don't want to be.
I like that. So how do we actually do that? How do we play the game, so to speak, without losing sight of ourselves?
Well, for starters, we can be more conscious of the choices we make. Even in a game like Monopoly, there's always room for compassion, for collaboration. Maybe you cut a deal that benefits everyone, even if it means you don't end up with Boardwalk.
So it's like bringing those values into the game, even if the game itself doesn't necessarily reward them.
Exactly. And the more we do that, the more those values start to bleed into other areas of our lives.
It's like building those muscles, that ability to make those choices even when it's hard, even when the stakes are higher.
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, what kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of person do I want to be? And then making choices that reflect those values, whether I'm playing a board game or navigating the real world.
So, in a way, GoreTV's messed up version of Monopoly has given us a bit of a gift. This chance to really examine those darker sides of ourselves, but also to make a conscious effort to choose a different path.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that even though the systems we operate in might not always be fair, we always have the power to choose how we respond. We get to decide what success really means, both for ourselves and for the world around us.
That's a really great note to end on, I think. So to all our listeners out there, next time you find yourselves gathered around a Monopoly board or maybe just facing a real-life dilemma, remember this conversation.
Don't be afraid to dive deep into those complexities. Question those default settings.
Exactly. And choose to play the game in a way that feels true to you.
Because ultimately, the choices we make, big or small, they all add up. They shape the world we live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the unexpectedly profound world of Monopoly. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deep.